everybody, to the Seeff'Cast, where we're going to be speaking about everything real estate, lifestyle, and current affairs of Dubai. Now, I am a property realtor of Seeff Dubai, and I'm joined with none other marketing specialist, Speech Nzomi. Speech, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So this thing has been a long time coming. You know, we've always wanted to do a Seeff'Cast, or rather a podcast, where we're going to speak about anything from real estate, lifestyle, just the current affairs of what's happening in Dubai, and just to furnish you with the information for somebody that's looking outside in, who doesn't know anything about the city, let alone the country. You know, so we just want to entertain and obviously give information as to how exactly they can invest, how exactly they can migrate, the ins and outs that we know, what we faced when we were coming into Dubai, because I mean, we're South Africans. And it's been a long time coming.
It's definitely been a long time coming. And thank you so much for holding it down. This amazing platform. I think it's an innovation that definitely, and the team that we've been talking about, just to accelerate the brand and take it to the people and create a platform where we can engage. Because sometimes people, you realize that it's not that they do not want to be in the market, they just don't know how to get into the market. So thank you, Mans.
All right. So now I think the burning question, or rather the question that everybody's always asking is, how is Dubai?
How is Dubai? You should be telling us.
You know, every person that we come across, that we meet, especially when we go to South Africa, how is Dubai? You know,
I think what's important is where that question is coming from, or what experience they're trying to build when you're asking that question. Because if you're a tourist who's just trying to travel to Dubai and you want to know how is Dubai from a tourist perspective, obviously the experiences that are going to be built from that are going to be completely different from a resident or from an investor, you know, somebody who's trying to get into the market. Or somebody who's already an investor in the market. You know, I'm sure you and I have a completely different experience as residents in Dubai, as opposed to a person maybe who has traveled to Dubai 1 or 2 or 3 times. I remember when I just moved to Dubai, I did a radio interview, and third question definitely had to be about slay queens in Dubai. I was like, you know what? But then just goes to tell you about the experiences, or maybe the perceptions, which are usually misconceptions that people have about Dubai. There's this very glittery, high life, you know, projection of what the city has to offer. But I think from a resident perspective, it's just next level in so many ways. It's a haven for one who's looking for safety, who's looking for economic stability, who's looking for, you know, a place of opportunities, you know. So there's so much more that we can gather when we're talking, just to try to define Dubai. We can spend the whole day. But how is Dubai? You have to come to Dubai to find out. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, to get people to come through.
That's true. Because, I mean, look, it's literally night and day, especially for a South African. You know, someone that's lived, obviously was born and bred in South Africa, and moving to a city where everything is literally the opposite of what you know. You know, as you just mentioned, the safety aspect, the security aspect, and just the general living here. You know, it is so different. The major thing that I've really loved about Dubai is the convenience. I mean, in South Africa, we really are lacking that whole convenience thing.
Right.
We're just doing a roadshow now in March, and malls and shopping centers are closing very early. That's just one of the examples. But then when you come here, like, everything is just 24 hours.
True.
You know,
True.
So
I think also, just talking about that convenience, a lot of people buy into what the city offers, especially when you're investing in real estate. I can look in very high profiled markets, especially like, you know, in countries like South Africa, where you're talking about the Western Cape, which is one of our biggest sellers also when you're looking in our group. But then people do not just buy a house or a structure. People want to buy into the experience. I think the hospitality industry has done quite well when it comes to that, you know, just to leverage on building experiences, because people don't just walk into your establishment for food. That's just one element of it. But there's entertainment, there's, you know, hospitality, how people get to be received and all of that. And so I think what the UAE has done specifically with Dubai is to create it as that cap for hospitality and for an experience. And I think I've gathered from a lot of investors, when you are poaching potential clients and investors whom financially, you know, they've got, you know, the financial muscle to invest in the country, but the question that often comes across is why Dubai? Why shouldn't I go to London? Why shouldn't I go to the States, New York, which for the longest time, for decades, were leaders when it comes to real estate because they built on experiences. I mean, you talk the likes of Manhattan and so on, London with all its beauties and wonders. But I think what Dubai has done over the years is not just to focus on the development, which is from the real estate perspective, but also to widen the gap when it comes to let's create an experience that's going to capture you and make you come back as a tourist. But also as a resident, let's make sure that safety is premium, you know. I remember when I just moved to Dubai, one of the things I just couldn't get over, and I realized that I actually was living with, you know, my psyche was highly influenced by the crime traumas that I had encountered before. The fact that when you're jogging in the evening, you keep looking over your shoulder because, I mean, anyone, Ipara could keep up anywhere. And I think for me, it took some time for me to realize, you know, just to calm down, to realize you're actually in a safe space. And I mean, we've seen also research around that, about why Dubai is the safest place for vulnerable groups, including women and children. That's very important to anyone who's trying to build a home and settle a home outside where they were born. So that public transport as well.
Oh,
that's another.
oh, listen.
Yeah, you know, a lot of clients, especially those who are coming from Africa, where we know that public transport, and people usually have this misconception that we're talking about public transport. We're talking, for an example, some people will say, we've got Gautrain in South Africa. And we'll be like, yeah, but let's talk about accessibility, how many people can actually afford it. And then you move to a city in Dubai with a bullet train that is accessible to each and every person, you know, that is efficient, it is operational almost 24/7. I mean, the last train, I think, closes around 12:30. The routes that are going to connect you to all the best pockets of the city, you know, those are some of the things. Cleanliness, can't get over. I mean, I've seen a couple of vloggers also on the internet who will wear their white socks and walk around the likes of Marina just to prove how clean. And I think also when I just moved to Dubai, I couldn't believe how much effort was being put by the government to ensure that when you wake up in the morning, there is a team that works 24 hours. So there are 24-hour shifts. So when the 5 o'clock guys knock off at 6 o'clock, there is a new shift that takes over. And their job is to just make sure that they've cleaned the city, right? They've cleaned the city. It is, we're going to wake up and it feels like a whole new Dubai all over again. And so those small, I would say, intentions from government really then encapsulate this entire experience that's going to inform what you make of Dubai.
You know, that's 100% true, because this city really focuses a lot on infrastructure. Like they are so big on just developing the entire city.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're driving on the highway, you're gonna find out that there's a new bridge that's been constructed in 2 weeks. That bridge is already there. And it's honestly because a lot of people are just flocking into the city. A lot of expats are coming into Dubai because it gives them the opportunity to expand themselves as individuals. It gives businesses the opportunity to expand their businesses over here because it is a global hub. You know, and I love the fact that you touched on the whole convenience thing about the transportation. And people don't realize that when you are in a city that the whole system works, it is so easy for you to just get anywhere. It's so easy for you to make that decision to say, I want to move into the city because everything just works for you. You know, we're so used to a government, we're so used to politicians, we're so used to parliament. And now you're getting into a country where there's nothing like that. You know,
there's law and order.
There's law and order.
And there are consequences.
There's consequences to it. Yes. Of course, you need to follow the rules that are set out to you. But any decision that needs to be made, there is no parliament where a group of 50 men and women sit down and decide. It's just, listen, this is what's going to happen, and we're doing it for the betterment of the people.
And usually, I mean, there's nothing completely wrong with countries or regions. We're coming from a country that is highly democratic, and perhaps that structure of parliament works given our political background, right? So that diversity is important. Now we're talking about GNUs and all of that. So we're seeing the evolution of politics and how, you know, the different political parties or political structures and organizations then get to participate for the betterment of people. But then I've also learned that, you know, humans are creatures of habit.
No, they are.
You know, when they know that this is where we're going, and if you go there, this is what's going to happen. Trust you me, when one person has digressed, the rest will see that we don't want to go there. And I've had a couple of people, ask this, but we've seen it in other countries, without mentioning countries where perhaps liberty has been misused,
Yes.
and there is no responsibility that has attached to each and every right. I think it should be standard principle that with each and every right there is a responsibility.
Yes, yes.
And we've seen it with Emiratis when you hear, as people who are working as professionals, as experts, talking about those systems as well, how they also protect, the systems and the dignity of the country. Patriotism is very important,
Yeah.
and it is then the locals, the people who are born, who are citizens of this country, who then protect its safety. And I think it's something that other countries also could learn, so that we're not easily persuaded to just be one check or one brown envelope away from selling just a piece or a stake of your country. So it's those things that then get to encourage you and to motivate you. I remember when I just moved to Dubai, I think one of the things I envied was just the systems. Like every single thing is connected, and the use of technology. Before getting into real estate, one of my previous roles that I had was in a department that was responsible for communications and digital technologies. That's quite a huge portfolio, the key elements that get into that. And so to move into a region that is applying future technologies, digital technologies, AI, every single thing is connected. You've seen when you're going shopping in Dubai. You just need to give them your ID and they know every single thing about you, And so it's really inspiring from a resident perspective. And I think it's exactly what each and every investor should look out for when they're looking to buy and to expand their portfolio to Dubai.
You mentioned that investors, they would always say, why Dubai? And it just sort of makes sense why they're asking that, because Dubai has not, in the past couple of years, have not really marketed themselves as a real estate city.
Even though they are, but they
really haven't, like, to the global market. Only now that in the past 2-3 years, they are starting to come up because of the political affiliations that's happening around the globe, So it makes sense for them, the investors that will ask you why Dubai, because they know, as you mentioned, London, New York, and all, because they've just been the powerhouse for a very, very long time. And Dubai to them is like it's a foreign word. And what they know about Dubai is what you see on the internet. They just know, Burj Khalifa, they know Marina, they just know like the flashy lifestyle. They don't believe that it's a real place.
I think when something is too good to be true, you then start to question whether it's even if you're good enough to even be in it.
Yes.
I've seen this when we're engaging clients in South Africa during our road shows, and who are now investors in Dubai, by the way. That process of converting them from just being prospective investors to actually being investors, to give them a layout of what the industry this side offers, and the fact that they can actually afford, because that's another thing. Again, going back to what I was saying, when something has been profiled, again, depends where you're looking at from. From a tourist perspective, obviously, when you get here, you want to see the Burj Khalifa, all the tourist attractions. You want to go shop at Gucci and whatnot. That's what Dubai is predominantly known for. But if you're an investor, surely you want to look beyond that lens. You want to interrogate what the city offers. Am I going to be protected? Because there's so much that gets into investor confidence. And so I think what we then get to do when we travel to the likes of South Africa, we've gone to Nigeria, we've moved around, DRC, where, what we realize is Africans are now waking up to the idea that you don't have to keep your investment in this one pocket. You don't need to have your eggs in one basket. And what then they realize as well, going back to investor confidence, is, there are many other regions. I remember there was one client that I really had to work on to convince them that Dubai was better in terms of, when it comes to property investment as opposed to Spain, which they had been told about before. And the only thing that led them over was the residency. And they didn't know that Dubai actually offers you that.
Yes, 100%.
And they didn't know that the various possibilities and opportunities that are also transferable to your immediate beneficiaries if you've got children when you invest in property in Dubai. And so I think From a real estate perspective, there's, a chunk of things that we can really get into.
Yeah.
And I think throughout this series, we'll
Yeah.
just keep on dissecting and getting into those things. But
Yeah.
now we're waking up, or we're realizing, which is a great thing. I mean, we saw the influx of Chinese who have invested here, especially in the past 2 years. We saw the high rise of Russians, who are investing here.
Yeah.
There are districts that are now known to be, have high volume of Russians.
Yes.
And I'm trying to be politically correct, just and so you're looking now at Africans, South Africans. I think also as the company in the past year alone, we can really attribute a high volume of our success, as Seff Dubai, to South African investors.
Yeah.
You know this. South African investors are now waking up to the idea of, taking just 1 or 2 eggs and putting them in Dubai. And lo and behold, it turns out that 1 egg will actually hatch and will be more productive. It will give you more chicks as opposed to these 15 eggs that you have kept in South Africa.
In one area.
And also people are realizing that, I think when you get into property, it's important for you to always ask yourself the question of what is in it for me? Because you're looking at capital appreciation. Is the money that I put in going to get me more than what I put in? That's the whole point of investment. Otherwise, you can take your money and just put it in your piggy bank or take it to your bank and then have that small interest, after 5 or 6 years. And so some clients that you have engaged, for example, this because you deal, you're a realtor. You find that people do have the money, but they just don't know how to grow it in a market that is foreign to them. Right? So that offshore investment and that investor migration program, various of them, but real estate offering you one of that residency that when you invest in one, for example, in rents would say 5 million rents, which you get to cover in a couple of years. I'm thinking about developers, for example, like Vincentor, that have got a payment plan that goes up to 2030, 2 years post handover. And so you think, surely to a South African who's really into the investment game, that is money that they can really chunk up, in the couple of years to come. And you always say, by the way, don't focus on 100%, focus on 50%. But then going back to what the city offers and what your investment offers, I think anyone right now is looking to be a part of a country or an economy that is stable, offers them stability. You also want that financial stability. You also want security, in terms of your finances. You also want to expose your offspring or your immediate dependents to a community or a society that's going to offer them much more than what your country offers them. I'm thinking of a client that I recently brought on board. They're a couple. They've got a couple of properties in South Africa, and they said, we are now thinking. We have lived our good lives in South Africa, and we've got pretty good lives. But we're thinking this society that we're in is not the kind of society that would like to raise children in, right? Besides, yes, it's home and it will always be home. But does it offer them or does it capacitate them to be fully functional and competitive in the world that they are going to live in? Because remember, when you've got children or you're thinking about investment, especially if you're thinking about investor migration, you want to make sure that you shift your investment, which is going to benefit those who are going to take over, right? Your children, your heirs, and all of that. And so what Dubai then does is they've introduced this 5-year Golden Visa, as I said, which is renewable every 5 years. But then there's that golden tick, which is the Golden Visa. And to see how they've moved it in terms of accessibility from what it used to be in previous years to it now being just by investing for 2 million AED. Which in rands we can say is what, 10.5. Again, you don't look at 100%, you look at 50%. But then to look at the benefit of that, the fact that you do not only get to, and I'd like to think it's the closest thing to citizenship right now, right, in the UAE. The fact that for 10 years you're a resident in Dubai, you no longer have to apply for that visa. Your children get to benefit and be immediate dependents, beneficiaries. But then also, you also get to introduce them. This is the first step of introducing them to a country or a city that is not only going to offer them opportunity, but then you're thinking access to credit, them being able to enter. I mean, look at how many traders and how big the market is in Dubai.
Yeah.
People who just, all they do all day, they're making millions.
Just by trading. Yeah.
These guys. Yeah. By just being traders. And that should tell you how futuristic the country is. The use of digital technologies. You go to schools in Dubai and you hear, children talking about the metaverse, and all these other new and diverse technologies. That should show you that it's a country that is gearing up for the next world.
Yeah.
And so why not then invest in a country like that,
yes,
or a city like that, that is not just going to place you in a privileged position, but also your children.
It's Dubai is actually built on family, and if you walk around, if you go to all these buildings, all these communities, you'll see that it's literally just it's family-based communities, family-based buildings. So it's like, it makes it so easy for you, if you're looking to start a family, it makes it so easy for you to say, I want to bring my family into Dubai because of that. You mentioned that you are used to being at home, taking a jog at night, looking over your shoulder, whereas opposed to being here, you can jog, walk at any time.
Anytime.
Your child can walk around the community and you don't have to worry about them being snatched away or anything happening to them.
Think about e-hailing services.
Exactly.
The fact that you can order anywhere and they would leave your goods outside. I was shocked.
Exactly. What I mean?
One time Amazon said, we've left your package outside your door. I said, what do you mean?
Someone's going to take it. Someone's going to take it. But that doesn't happen here.
It doesn't happen here. So it's those small things.
So it's really those small things. And look, I think, or rather, honestly, we are so fortunate to be, for lack of a better word, lab rats of Dubai, having this big name behind us, to really come in, to really research, to really know the ins and outs, so that we are able to communicate that to the South Africans, or rather to the African market, or whoever doesn't know anything about real estate or about Dubai. But they do know Seeff. They do know Seeff. A lot of clients that we have dealt with have obviously dealt with the Seeff in South Africa, so they know.
And most of them will say, I had my first property with Seeff.
With Seeff, exactly. So I think now, when you also just touched on the fact that, if you have this 5-year visa or the Golden Visa, it can be passed down to, your heirs or your children. But a lot of people don't understand is that if you don't have a will set in place in Dubai, it's going to take months for you to actually, even years, for you to actually have access to your bank accounts or the properties that you have. So I've had a client where, unfortunately they passed away, but there was no will that was set in place. And the family is going through a lot just to try to get the properties transferred. Anybody that's looking to invest, anybody that's looking to, get into this market, the first thing you should think about is having a will. And I think
protection.
And I think, this is an oversight for somebody that is, dealing with real estate. They're going to think that, okay, my property is going to stay in Dubai and it's going to be safe. Yes, 100% it's going to be safe, but always have that in place. The same way you would have it in your home country.
In your home country,
Always have a will in place.
I think once then, it's, again, going back to what clients always ask. If you're just going to deal with a typical real estate agent, all they care about is the sale. Commission. And this is what I always say, and their commission. They're just pushing you to get to a certain milestone, and then it's goodbye. Now you deal with the developer, right? And I've had clients whom I've worked from their first EOI to them getting to their 14%, 24, 34, up to handover, right? Because again, you are not just selling a structure. It's not just about that one hit sale. Trust is very important, especially if I'm going to take my funds and diversify them in a city like Dubai that probably I've visited once or twice. I've never been, right? I've only heard of. And so then that's where the importance of working with a brand that is trusted with 61 years of experience, in the game, with over 250 branches in Africa. We're now talking, we're just recently, when we were in South Africa, our chairman was telling us that now we've diversified to Tanzania, there's Kenya coming up. And even though we're covering that African footprint, but look at what we have managed to do in one of the highest, if not the most competitive market in real estate. With thousands of brokerages in Dubai, right? With thousands of agents who are
they're hungry.
Oh, they're hungry.
They're hungry.
And they want it.
Yes, they're hungry.
You know, there's no
100%.
time. And sometimes I have agents who will be like, oh, you know what? I'm still trying to, I'm not sure if I should. And I'm like, listen, if you come to Dubai, you better make sure that you've got your A game.
Yeah.
Because it is cutthroat,
Yeah.
right? Every single person wants to get that EOI from that client. You can even, just today we're going to one of, launching one of our projects.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, there's a client that's going to be snatched there by a slow agent, right? But then when you work with a brand that is trusted and that you can trace, right? We've had a couple of clients, for example, that would say, I'm coming to you guys because of the brand that you carry, which is Seeff. Maybe I invested in Botswana or Swatini or Zimbabwe. I'm now trying to move into real estate in South Africa, in the UAE. And so being able to walk that journey with your clients is important, and that's one of the things that you specialize in. Think about our values. It's family, it's transparency, all those things. So trust is a big element, because we've had brokers or developers that will ship their team all the way to South Africa, right? There's that one notorious one.
Oh yes,
with their guerrilla marketing.
I'm not going to mention names,
but then it saddens me when you then have clients who will be duped, because what they were sold and what's actually in the market are two different things, right? They're streams apart. So what then that does, it discourages, it creates a bad impression. And unfortunately, we're in the business of optics. And our ambassadors are the people that will get to engage, or people who can then get to taste the market. I also engaged recently. I was in a meeting, and the client I was meeting then gets joined by their business associate, who unfortunately had fallen victim to one of those. And the minute I said investment Dubai property, he said, I'm still trying to get out of this deal, So obviously it has informed their psyche as an investor. And they were even thinking, it's that very client that I said I needed to take through the difference of Spain, which is a market that's also doing well in their own right. But you can't compare them to Dubai in terms of what the market offers this side. And so being a part of a solid brand, not just a brand that is solid, a brand with a good reputation, are very important. And I think sometimes, just relatability is important. That people will be like, no, man, I'd rather trust you because you and I, you're my brother.
You're from home.
You're from home.
You're from home.
I know how to trace you and all of that. And that should tell you, I think wherever there's a high opportunity, there's also high risk, and so it's very important that when one gets into the market, come to a brand that come to people that you can, would speak your language, who will be able to walk the step with you from step one to step Z, just walk the journey with you.
It's very, very imperative to, first do your research. And as much as we're also here to assist you in terms of, researching the market, but you yourself should also do your research before you fall victim into these dealings. Because as you said, sometimes it is too good to be true. And sometimes what we present to you sounds too good to be true, but then we have track record to say, look, this is what's been happening for us with our clients. They have invested X amount, and this is what they're getting, or rather, this is their future returns. It's just up to them to just really realize that, okay, in as much as Dubai is this place where everybody's investing in, of course, this agent or this developer or this individual wants to get the most out of it. And then you're not going to be able to be in touch with them anymore.
Definitely.
So it's always best to deal with people that who are close to home.
Now, and just talking about things that are too good to be true, by the way, what are some of the things that you've told your clients before you had them on board that were just too good to be true when it comes to investment?
Okay, so now I'm going to speak about our South African clients, or rather my South African clients. They are used to this thing called timeshares. Timeshares is pretty much, it's global, it's everywhere. But in South Africa, it's also a little bit, it's one of the easiest investment strategies. Investing in a certain property, only paying for a certain amount, for a certain size, you're going to get your returns every single month. Now, a client will come to me and say that they've invested in a timeshare property in the UAE, and they paid a large amount of money. They were promised so many returns, and I just had to tell them that, look, that's not going to happen for you. I can tell you right there off the bat, because the person that you're dealing with or the company that you're dealing with only sold you a square foot or square meter. And what they promise you is definitely not true, because marketing here is it's a skill, and it's a big thing. It's a big thing. I mean, they'll take you around, they'll show you everything that you want to see. They would, hang the golden egg in front of you, and you want to catch it.
You will salivate.
You'll salivate for it, as an investment. And you just think, oh, wow, I just need to put this amount and I'm going to get so much returns. Of course, I mean, if you know for a fact that you've bought a property worth 5 million rands in South Africa, but you're only getting 10,000 rand rental income, but then you're going to put the same amount or less amount, but you're going to get more. I mean, you should obviously do the math. You know what I mean? But then the marketing is so good. The way that they persuade you is also very, very good. So dealing with that client and telling me that they want to sell their property, and I just tell them that, look, it's impossible for me. It was impossible for us to actually sell it, because you just bought a square meter. And nobody's going to want to buy a square meter for that amount, unfortunately.
True.
So yes, it is too good to be true. And, you don't think about it at that time or at that specific period once you're signing the contract. It's literally going to go away from you. But now, somebody who is looking, forget about real estate, somebody who's looking to move here, somebody who wants to grow themselves, what would you suggest them to do? Because I would always say, look, take a week or 2 weeks, come to the city, experience it for yourself. Don't come as a investor, come as a resident. Think of yourself as a resident. Do what a resident would do in the UAE or in Dubai, because you just mentioned that Dubai is an area where you have to wake up and you have to hustle. It's a hustler's paradise. Almost like what it was what Joburg was,
New York.
5, 10 years, how New York was as well, But over here, that's what it is. People come here to work, to make money, to send back home, or to grow themselves. So what would you suggest for somebody that doesn't know Dubai, read about it on the news or saw it on Instagram, TikTok, whatever? What advice would you give? What's that piece that would say, look, before you come here, do this?
Contact a Seff agent and buy property. Simple. Contact a Seff agent. They'll help you to buy property. They will walk you through it.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Because, again, talking about, how we've realized that people sometimes think this idea of investing in Dubai and being a property owner this side is far-fetched.
Yeah.
On social media the other day, I said, did you know that by just putting in as little as 100,000 rands, which is usually what an EOI would be, 1%, you then have your first step into the market. Do you know how my inbox was inundated with inquiries? People saying, actually, tell me more. 2 of my clients I met when I was in Durban, who are now, investors this side. When I told them what it would take for them to, maybe let's say pay their first 14% and whatnot. And when I told them, when I broke down the fee for them, they were like, actually, all along we've been affording. And we've been taking money and investing in property this side. That's not really appreciating and giving us capital appreciation as we'd love. And so that's just one most important element, right? And I can't shy away from that. I mean, we're in the business of real estate.
Of course.
And this is not just from a sales perspective. But I think if you are looking at moving to Dubai, you firstly need to ask yourself how. And the easiest way, obviously, is to invest in property and real estate. Because if you're going to move to Dubai, you need to go through the traditional way, long way of finding a job. And you're going to be under their visa. Here we're talking about you simply taking your money, saying, let me buy property, let me get an ID. You have a residence, an ID with your name that's going to be written investor. You have a bank account this side. And then you can look at the funds that you have, maybe that are left from your savings account. Then you can use those just to navigate and to move around the city. But at least you know that you're a resident. And I think sometimes, especially when it comes to access to opportunity, if you're looking for jobs, an opportunity will be easier for you to access when you already have residency.
Yeah.
You don't need the company to sponsor your visa, especially in a business like real estate, or maybe you want to be a freelancer and so on. So the first thing I would say is ask yourself how, because for you to just have a dream of moving to Dubai is one thing. I mean, we all dream of things.
Yeah.
And you can be as idealistic as you want, but you need to get to a point where you say, okay, how do I get there? And again, from an investor perspective, real estate is one of them. And again, to cut the whole long process of you looking for a job and whatnot, another opportunity is you opening a business this side.
Yeah.
And we've seen how other people, I mean, there's, a gentleman that I was pursuing as a potential client for years, And you know how you're going to take those clients who now and again will come and they're excited and then they disappear and then you have to go back after some time. And so I called him one of these days and he said, oh, by the way, do you know that I'm now a resident in Dubai? I was like, oh, really? He said, yeah, through business. But then, there are pros and cons when it comes to that, in terms of where your license, in terms of operation is going to be. Is it going to be mainland? Is it free zone and all of that? But then also business activity, there's a license fee that you have to pay and whatnot. Now we're talking when you're going back to real estate as opposed to having a company, maybe that you're going to operate offshore, especially when maybe it's free zone. You have taxes. There are tax obligations, especially if maybe your returns a year of a certain bracket. It's what now 9%. 9%. 9% corporate tax. So there's that responsibility that's attached to that. So one, I always say, obviously work with some agencies that are friends of the business who then get to take our clients through the entire process. We've had clients who then say, let me invest in real estate, and this is why we always say, just buy a property first, get your residency, and then open a business, right? Because you'd find that some of the things that perhaps you would have to pay for, or there's better guidance when you're a resident this side. And so again, it's going to take me back to just contact a SIF agent, get a good SIF agent, they will take you through, put that EOI, and get yourself property.
100%. Right. So look, this is honestly going to be a very, very intriguing and interesting series. We hope to get more experienced realtors, investors, or even citizens of the UAE, to touch base and as to how the UAE has been for them for the past 5 or 10 years. We're still babies in Dubai, but of course we have learned so much, we've grown so much. We know exactly what to look out for and how exactly we can present this to someone that's looking outside. So with that being said, this is going to be where we're going to cut it off. Speech, as always, is such an amazing time to have a conversation with you about anything in real estate and anything lifestyle. And look, let's keep moving forward. Let's keep advising these investors the right way into how to invest in Dubai.
And can I just say this, maybe just look at the camera to potential investors or people who are watching this. You will never know if you qualify unless you pick up the phone and you call, right? So reach out to a SIF agent, reach out to our offices who are here all the time. Inbox Monzi, inbox me, go to the SIF page, whatever,
Information is there.
But also it's important for you to sometimes, without really being spiritual, but people perish for lack of knowledge, So it's important for you to just inquire. There's no such thing as a stupid question, especially if maybe, you're thinking, I probably do have the money. I mean, these people are talking about putting down an EOI of 100,000. And then maybe if I've got 2 million rands, that's just sitting at around, I would have covered, a huge chunk of my, my payment plan. Oh, there are payment plans as well. So I don't have to pay this upfront, all those things, talking about mortgages and all of that. These are some of the things that would have to cover, obviously, as we're going through the series. I think it's important that we say people should not be afraid to drop us their questions as well as they're engaging and they're looking, watching this episode. There's no such thing as a stupid question. That one question you could ask could be that one key that will unlock your door of entering the market in Dubai. And now is the best time, by the way, to enter the market. Because in 5 or 6 years' time, actually, not even that's 5 years and 6 years is too long. In 3 or 2 years' time, you are going to thank yourself. That future self will thank you for taking that first step and investing in Dubai, because your capital appreciation will be speaking for itself. We're talking an EOI of between 5 to 8, and now there are talks about each reaching 12. You know, highest in the market. You know, so there's so many pockets that you can look into and then make this decision. But you can't make it alone. You need a Seeff'A on board. So thank you for having me, Mons.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for viewing. Of course, like, subscribe, comment, and hope to see you in the next episode.
And Habibi, come to
Dubai.